Alright, hello everyone. So today we're going to go ahead and learn how to make the screens. So using the input from the previous meetings, I went ahead and created UI screens for all of the screens that we have. So let's go ahead and take a look. So this is the home side. This is the incoming calls. There's the contacts. There's a settings section. But right now we're going to go ahead and focus on how we can manage our views efficiently and really be able to make reusable views, organize them properly. So the main thing is that we have UI views, and those are the building blocks of our entire app. Every single thing is basically just a UI view customized to look differently. And so let's say we have this view right here. So I just called it a person card view because it's just a little card with details of a person. And we're going to have to reuse them because you can see here it's a grid of multiple different people and all of their details. So we can't just, copy code for each and every person, right? Instead, what we'll do is we'll just make one template for a card, and every time we want to have a new person show up, all we have to do is copy that template and fill out the information for them. For example, their name and the time will be different, and then we'll just instantiate a couple of different one of those for each person. So how exactly do we do that? Well, that's what we're going to be doing today. We're just going to focus on building one of these card views right here. So let's go ahead and open up Xcode first off. And we'll go ahead and make a new Xcode project. Just make sure that it's a single view application. And for now, I'll call it UIView tutorial. You can name it whatever you want. Go ahead and click next. Save it wherever. Oops, I've already made one with the same name. Let's call it UIView card. Make one of those. And now we have something right here, a project. So we've already went over the basics of Xcode. Over here we have the main.storyboard. And what we could do is actually just drag in a view, customize it, make it look just like this one. But here's the problem, right? If you make it in here, let's say that I have another view controller. Let's say maybe in another person's contacts, you want to see maybe people who showed up around the same time as them. And you want to use the same card view in the home screen and on the contact screen. Now, this is where things would get complicated. Let's say you change the design. Then you'd have to go back into the first view, update that, then copy and paste it in here. Then every time you made a change to the first one, you have to delete this, go back, copy and paste it back here. And that's why that people don't do like that. Instead, we use something called an Xiview. And basically, similar to how there's a main.storyboard, we get our own new Xib file where we can make our own custom view. And then whenever we want to use it, all we'd have to do is drag in a UI view, go to the class, and change it to the same class that we've just created. And it'll automatically use those attributes. Let's go ahead and make this. So first off, what you want to do is you want to create a new Swift file, a new subclass of the UIView class. So in order to subclass different things, you're going to want to click on first off, make sure you're on the iOS section. Then you're going to want to click on the Cocoa Touch class. Then make sure that this says UIView. You can change it to viewer controller. You can subclass pretty much anything, but right now we're just subclassing a UIView. And we'll just call this a person card view for now. Hit next. Click create. Now we have a little empty class in here. And setting it up would be a little complex, but that's why I've already went ahead and created a boilerplate template code. So I'll put this on a Google Doc, which will be linked somewhere. And all you need to do is copy all that and put it in here. Now this is a bunch of useless stuff that you don't really have to know how it works until maybe later. But all it does is it allows you to load a class from a different file. Now we're going to go ahead and copy paste this in here. Then the next step is to again, oops, what happened there? Hit Command N, or you can always do File New, Command N, then this time we're going to make the XIB file. What you want to do is make sure you're on iOS again. So I'm going to user interface and click the view class. Then just hit create. Whoops. Forgot to rename it. I'll call it this one person card view.xib as well. Now you see we have a similar view. It also looks like an iPhone. But we want to make it into this little small card, right? So instead, we're going to click on this on the view, then go over here to the identity attributes inspector, and then we go to the size section and change it from infer to freeform. Basically, what this allows us to do is now we can change it to whatever we want. That's what it's called, freeform. And I'm just gonna go over here and check the size. It says 82 by 118, and I'm gonna go ahead and change that. So now I'll go over to this ruler section here, size inspector, and I'll change it to 82 by 118. 82, 118. That's really small, so just go ahead and zoom in. Now, we can go ahead and get started by actually coding some things up. So first thing you want to do is this XIB file has to be able to communicate with the personCardView.swift file, so that they can tell each other, okay, these are the views that I'm going to be using, and then the code can say, okay, I'll modify those views. So what you want to do first is go to the files owner section right here, then go ahead and click on the class button right here, and change the class to personCardView, as it says right here. Hit enter, and now we're done setting that up. Now this XIB file knows that it's going to be getting all of its data from the personCardView.swift. Now we can go ahead, continue on, and actually make some of the classes, some of the views, and customize it. The first thing we notice that over there we have an image view, right? So I'm going to do exactly what you think we're going to do. I'm going to drag in an Uiimageview. Then you can manually drag it like this, or what I like to do is just go into here and just change the X and Y to 0. Then I can just move it like this. Now we want the image to be a square because that's what it looks like in the design. So now we're gonna have to set up constraints to make sure that even when you stretch this out or move it around, it still looks nice. So first off, if you remember properly from our lesson, we're going to pin this to the sides and to the top. That means whenever you stretch it, no matter how much you stretch it, instead of just staying here, it'll also stretch along with the image. And let me show you how that'll work. So if I hold Control and drag to the side, I'll get a leading space container. Get to this side to the right, I'll get trailing space. Then this time I want to drag it to the top, but since it's not going to work because I've already put it as high as possible, I'm going to move it over to this view thing here. And that's just saying if you want to connect any constraints to the entire view itself. So over here I have the leading, I have the trailing, meaning that it'll always constrain to the left and right. And then I'm going to add another one saying that it should also constrain to the top. Save anyways. What's the problem there? Now you can see that when we move it, you see over here that there's a red arrow. That means that there's some constraint missing. So it says we need a constraint for the height. That's because even if we stretch it around, it won't know how high the view has to be. So we want to make it a square, right? So basically we want the width to always equal the height. There's an easy way to do that, and it's called aspect ratio. So if you control drag onto itself rather than outside, just drag it onto itself, hit the aspect ratio button, and now it's created a ratio for us, but it's a square, right? What's the aspect ratio of a square? It's 1:1. If we go ahead and hit that, now we have a square perfectly in there. Simple as that. Now see, no auto layout issues. Now if we were to drag this around, you can see that as I move around, it automatically changes itself to be a square and also to constrain to the left, right, and to the top. Ta-da, we're done with that. Next off, let's go ahead and add in these labels over here. So first off, we want some label for the name. So you can check the properties here. It says that the size is 12 and the font is SWI display and light. So let's go ahead and drag in a label. Font size, was 12, and it was light. I'll hit done. Now I'll also change it to center aligned. And if you're using Sketch, the handy thing to use is if you hold the Alt or Option key, you can see the pixel distance between different items. So I click on the Jake label, and then if I hold Alt and point it towards the picture, this is that it's 4 pixels away from the picture. So if I go in here, I can control drag onto the picture, and then I can say vertical spacing, meaning that it'll always be 4 pixels to the bottom of the image. Now there's a red thing over here again, and says it needs constraints for the X position. And we always want it to be centered, right in the middle. So just control drag off somewhere over here. I can say center horizontally in container. Now, you can see that things are orange. Basically that means that the constraints are different from what's actually seen on the screen. So I can change it. So in order to update the actual view, all I have to do is go over to the bottom over here and hit this recycle arrow thing. It says update frames. Hit it, and it's been changed. I'll just change this to name for now. Then we want the second one for the time. The time, it says that it's 0 pixels away from the top of that. So go ahead and do that as well. Another label, drag this in, call this time, change the font again to this time. The font size is 8 and it's light. I want to center this as well, and just say center horizontally and vertical spacing. Now notice that it's not actually, if we hold Alt on here as well, we can see the pixel difference. It's actually 3 pixels away. So in order to update these, you can go over here to the ruler section, go down to the constraints here. I can say, okay, top space to the image view is 3, it should be 4, so I can just hit edit, click 4, and we're done. Over here again, top space 3, it should be 0, change that, and we're done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put in some random image over here just so we can see that it actually works. So I have a folder of stock images. I'll just put in some random thing over here. To add in images, you'll have to go to the assets.exe assets folder. Drag this one over here, dragging the image, and I'll just call it face for now. We go back to the XIB file and click on the image view, go to the attributes inspector, click on image, and I'll press face. You can see it's all messed up. That's because it's getting squished. So we're going to make sure that everything fits properly and it maintains its aspect ratio. We can do aspect fill. Basically, it'll make sure that the image fills the entire square while still keeping the dimensions the same. So now, everything should be working. Now we go back in here to the personcard.swift, and we see that there's actually one thing that we forgot to do, and that's over here. The nib name, or also the name of the XIB file, needs to be modified to our own file name, and we called it personcardview.xib. Let's type that in, personcardview. Now it knows that this code file needs to grab it from this UI file. Now let's demonstrate this actually being used. So first off, I'm going to grab a random UIView in here, and I'll make sure that's the same size, 82 by 118. Then for now, I'll set constraints to the width and height so it's always the same width and height. I'll center it horizontally and center it vertically, so now we have something right in the center. Now I can go to the class inspector and change it to personCardView. Now even though it's empty over here, when we run it, it'll get the code from here, and which will in turn get the code from the UI file, and it should load everything up properly. Let's go ahead and test it out. I'm just running it on the simulator. Now we wait and wait. When it's there, and see, ta-da, it worked. But there are some weird things, but in order to really properly see this, I'm just going to go into here, click on the view controller, go to the attributes inspector, sorry, go click on the view here, view, which is the entire view, the attributes inspector, and I'll change the background to a little dark black color. Now when we actually run it, we can see, you'll be able to see the actual view better. Now we can see that this image is actually displaying the entire thing rather than cutting it off. Now how we can fix this is go back to the personcardview.xib, click on here, go to the attributes inspector. You can check something called clips to bounds. Basically, it does exactly what it says. It clips the entire image to this little square shape here. So if you run it now, it should be cutting the edges of the image so that it fits perfectly on there. And ta-da! It all works fine. So we can see that if I zoom in a little too, it all works just as it should be. You can tell that they're identical as well. But there's another problem that we sort of have here, and it's that we have all these fancy things, right? We have these corner radiuses, we have a little border color. We also, another problem that we know is that we have to be able to change the names of these labels based on whatever the actual data from the person is. So that's why we have it set up over here, and there's a little boilerplate function called setup UI. And this is basically a function that runs right at the beginning, and we can basically connect this to our UI file and get the labels in terms of variables. So if I click on personcardview.swift, then I hold option, or I click on the assistant editor, I'll just hold option, the option key, and click on personcardview.xib. Now we have a split file, and we've done this before, but just in case you forgot, what you can do with this is I can click on any of these items. I'll click on the face, then I'll drag it in here, control drag it in here, then I'll just call it image view. And this is a small problem that happens. If this happens, just click cancel and do it again. It's just Xcode messing up. Then the name, drag it in here. Okay, that's not where I want to do. I'll just put in some space. Call it name label. Now we have the time. Call it time label. Now I've entered all of these in as variables. Now if I go back here, just delete this extra space. In the setup UI function, I can do whatever I want to these things. So for example, I can say name label.text is equal to Jake. I can call the time label.text is equal to 2 days ago. Now if I run it, these properties, the label, should have changed to whatever I set it to. See, it works nice. Now it says Jake in 2 days ago. Now another thing that you might be wondering is, don't we need to do this from the actual view controller instead of being able to do it in here? Well, yeah, that's right, because we want to be able to pass in data to this card view and have the UI view change based on that. So what we could do instead is add another function that says setup information, and this time pass in some variables. For example, I will say name, which is a string, and also days ago, which would probably be an integer. And we can always customize this later. Now, oops, forgot to say function. Now I can say that the name label.text should be equal to name, and the time label.text should be equal to, and I'll say, this is, if you don't know what this is, this slash plus the brackets allow you to put in a variable inside a string. So we have days ago. Basically the days ago will be a number like 5. So we put in here, say I pass in 5, then it'll say 5 days ago. Label.text. Oh, oops, name. There, now if you build it, everything should be working fine. Now what I could do is I could go into my view controller, and for now I'm just going to do, okay, scratch that. Now what I would normally want to do is I could go into the storyboard, connect this in here, let's call it person card view, connect it in. Now we have an object of type person card view. Now when the view did load, I can just say person card view dot setup information. I can pass in Bob, and I can pass in, let's say, 21 or 23, sorry. Then I can go back in here, and that means I don't need this any longer. I do not need any of that, because I'm already doing it from the function inside the view controller. So now if I go ahead and do this, as soon as it should run, this function will activate and change the properties to Bob and 23. See, right there, it worked perfectly. Just to show you this better, you can go to window and scale on the simulator and change it to things like this. So you can change the size to make it bigger and smaller. Alright, so now we have a cool looking person card view over here, but we can tell that, again, as I just said before, some of the things are different. For example, it's rounded here. There's also a border. Now this is where things get a little more complex, and that will be taught in the next video. But for now, you have everything you need. So go ahead and try to make a couple of more things. And if you want to do this as a challenge by yourself, here's what you can do. Any UI properties, for example, like this rounded corner or border radius and border colors, can't be done inside of here. Xcode is just a little bit weird in that you can't do that. Instead, you actually have to make these properties in code. And that's why the setup UI function exists, is because in here, we can do anything we want with the code. For example, we could say self.layer.corner, let's say border color is equal to UI color.white.cg color, and self.layer.border width is equal to, let's say, maybe like 3. And now if I run this, I've added on the border color and border width properties, so it should be updated as well. And ta-da, we have a little border now. Now if you want to make this rounded corner thing, it's a little bit more complex. But if you actually search it up on Google and try to find a Stack Overflow post, you might find something that can explain it pretty easily. So go ahead and try to do things that you don't know how to do, because that's the best way to learn. You can go ahead and Google anything that you'd want to do that you don't know yet, and you can probably find a good tutorial teaching you how to do it yourself. So go ahead and try to make different things. For example, as a challenge, you can try to make this rounded border radius thing. Or you could go ahead and try to make one of these buttons. For example, all you'd have to do is do the exact same thing as I showed you in the tutorial, except now, instead of adding in just a bunch of views, you'd also have to add in a button. For example, this little circle thing here, it would have to be a button instead of just a regular view. And you can customize things. For example, you can try making this little circular image view. Instead of just being a square like it is in the simulator, you'd have to turn it into a circle, and you'd have to add on the border radius. Or you could try making one of these rectangular cells. So go ahead and play around with the views. Remember, a brief tutorial is first you make the Swift file, and then you copy in the boilerplate code, then you make an XIB file, and you make sure that you go to the file's owner, you click on the attributes inspector, the class inspector, sorry, and change to the name of the file. And also make sure that you remember right here to change the name of your file to the name of the string to the name of the XIB file that you made. And then in the setup UI, you can change whatever properties you want, and over here you can drag in and add whatever things you want as well. So that's all for now. Go ahead and play around and try to make anything cool that you want, but these UI files will also be on the Google Drive, so you can go ahead and check them out and try to replicate any of the views that you would like to do. And you can also work with a partner. You can go ahead and try to make one of these.